Okay, so I will talk about Sashiko in English while I'm talking in English. Okay. All right. Will be able to answer some questions if I get it in English. All right, let's do it. Hi, Sakura. It was a quite long Japanese live session, so I will come back to this just a second. All right. Hello, 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 hello. All right. Thank you for watching on the YouTube as well. YouTube might be better to catch up with the questions. The live Instagrams goes quite. I'm sorry. The comments on the Instagrams passes pretty fast. So I may not be able to catch your comments if it's on the Instagram, but so please consider the YouTube as well. Sakura どいて。桜どいて。ごめん、桜どいて。桜どいて。よっしゃ。So it's the continued version of. I promise that I will do this Sashiko stitching only on the Instagram. No, means not only. Only in the live streaming. So there we go. よいしょ。桜どいて。南米のペルーからぜひぜひよろしくお願いします。これ英語の配信なので英語だけになっちゃうかもしれないですけどよろしくお願いします。よかったら英語でコメントください。よいしょ、桜ごめん。Alright, I didn't bring any topic today to discuss, so I have to find out something. I have to come up with something. What is going to be a good topic to discuss? Spanish! I don't speak Spanish, sorry. I know. There are a lot of audience in Spanish speaking countries, so I love to speak in Spanish, but I don't know if I can. Well, I don't think I can do it at all. Whew. So the previous time I talked about sustainability and Sashiko. I appreciate many comments on that. I enjoyed some of the feedbacks, and the point is that Sashiko is in fact the stitching for the sustainability, for the recycling or repurposing the fabric. At the same time, saying whatever can be quite dangerous to destroy the sustainability within the Sashiko. There are many reasons for what I do, what I use, and how. So it would be great to care for the another side of sustainability when we talk about that. It's not about, well, it's not, I'm not talking about cultural appropriation. It's not that big of topic to discuss, but when we look at one thing, we tend to forget the other side of the theme. So it is very true to use whatever we have for the purpose of recycling. It is very true, but however, calling that whatever as Sashiko or borrow, or using the word outside of your culture, can be quite dangerous. That's what I meant by sustainability in Sashiko. Strat. I can say only private. I'm sorry. I know private is not really polite, but I'm sorry about that. Hello, hello. あらなんだこりゃ。ちょっと待って。どこで止まったえちょっと待ってね。Hello, can you recommend what a good Sashiko thread brand? The Sashiko thread brand is the one I use, which is on the website. I think you can go to the website from this description of this live streaming. Or not, just let me check. Yes, it is the upcyclestitches.com. That's my website, and then I only offer the Sashiko thread I recommend. Well, I use. I'm sorry. I only sell the Sashiko thread I use based on my experience. So everything I have it there is my recommendation. There's a very big difference between this thread, regular thread, like some people use basting thread for Sashiko, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's really against the principle of Sashiko. So I really recommend using the specific Sashiko thread, and my recommendation is on that website. All of the thread I sell on the website is my recommendation. My grandmother was from Yamagata, and Sashiko brings me a little closer. Yes, Yamagata is a very, very famous prefecture for Sashiko. Do you remember which part of Yamagata is your grandmother from? Like, there's a kind of like not a difference, but more like a variation of the Sashiko, even from the same prefecture. Wow, that's really. It is very nice to have the stories. Everybody has stories. It's really good to have those. Find the links between the memories and facts. That's pretty much what I'm doing. Maruyama City, Maruyama. I'll write it down. I don't know anything about Maruyama City and Sashiko, but I'll take a look at that. There might be the Sashiko in Maruyama City. Maruyama. There are many cities in Yamagata that is famous for Sashiko, and I don't know that. If you are using different materials in another piece but using Sashiko stitches and patterns, what would be respectful to call it? I don't know. I don't know. If you are willing to learn the Japanese culture behind the word Sashiko, then probably there's no problem with it calling Sashiko. But if you tell others, if you think whatever is fine in doing whatever you do and call it Sashiko, then it's not okay. So it's not about what to use. Like, I recommend using Sashiko thread when you do Sashiko, because there are many reasons why we use Sashiko thread. However, it does not mean that I will be upset if you do not use Sashiko thread and call it Sashiko. I mean, there are people who cannot get Sashiko thread. I mean, it's not that expensive in comparison to the other thread. If you live in the like northern part of the US or Europe, there's many brands of Sashiko thread, and you can get one of those. But if you live in kind of far from those places or outside of Japan, it might be difficult to get the Sashiko thread. I don't want to pay like $20 or $30 to get Sashiko thread, which is like $10. So it is perfectly fine to call your stitching Sashiko when you try to understand the Japanese culture behind it. The cultural appropriation or the time or opportunity or moment that I feel very sad, not upset. Sad is that people call this stitching Sashiko saying that whatever is fine, whatever is not fine. I want them to know what Sashiko means to us. So again, it's not about what you can do or what you use or how what kind of patterns you use or what kind of materials you use. It doesn't really matter if you try to understand the culture, stories, concepts, mindset, philosophy behind the word. Does it make sense? I am not gonna say that you're not using the Sashiko thread, you're not using the cotton fabric, so you're not doing Sashiko. That's not what I'm trying to do. At the same time, saying whatever is fine is also dangerous because I don't know any Japanese who say whatever. They have a preference. They do have a preference. They have a different preference. They have different techniques. They have different materials, different style. But I don't think they say whatever is fine. I mean, whatever is like kind of the end of learning, in my opinion. It's my opinion, but I know English is not my first language, so I might be wrong. But when somebody say it's whatever is fine, is kind of the end of educating myself. If I say whatever is fine, or even say whatever, means like it's the end of caring. It's the signs of ignoring or not caring. And the core message of Sashiko that I want to share throughout this account is the importance of caring. Caring the fabric, caring somebody you know, caring somebody you love. So as long as you care to learn or to understand, to know the culture of Sashiko behind the stories, I am not gonna be offended. I mean, I will of course introduce what is good for Sashiko and to sustain the community, or there are many people who make Sashiko thread in Japan, so I want to help them as well. So I will do my best to advocate those people, but at the same time, it does not mean that I am gonna be, how can I say, exclusive for that. It's not about what, it's about how. I hope it makes sense. Does it make sense? Good. Like, it's really, I don't want to make it simple, but I sometimes I sometimes provide this easy statement. If you care to ask me if what they're doing is Sashiko or not, or even like the question, if somebody asks me if what they're doing is gonna be disrespectful to me, no, because you had a moment to ask, so that's the sign of care. So that's perfectly fine. Wow, there we go. There's a hater here. I have some haters, not haters, trolling. So that's, I usually don't have her here, but there we go. So that's the kind of concept of what I'm doing. People call it whatever is. Well, I don't really see them that much recently, but there were many, not many. I see some who say that whatever. So that's the, how can I say? It's not even the anger. It's more like a, how can I? It's not even anger. It's I call it sadness because I felt sad, but it's not. Well, if I come up with some like nice word, I will explain it. If I would like to learn Sashiko properly, do you think there are places in Japan that teach? Mm, that is very difficult to define what is the proper Sashiko, because there is no such a thing as the right Sashiko. Um, it existed pretty much everywhere in Japan, so depends on where you learn at, you will get different Sashiko for that matter. My Sashiko is not available in Japanese because it was not. Um, it was a kind of protect. I was not allowed to teach until recently. Well, until I decided to break that rule by myself. So I don't know. I don't know any place. Well, I know one student from my student teaching in Hokkaido. But if you wanna learn that in Hokkaido, that's possible, but you have to be able to speak Japanese. I don't know any places that you can learn proper Sashiko, but there are some Sashiko schools, I guess. Not a school, Sashiko workshop, I would say. But I'm sorry, long story short. Long story short, please consider my online Sashiko class. I used to have the in-person workshop in the New York, and usually, not usually, mainly on the East Coast, but because of the COVID, I moved to the online, and I think, not a thing, I am pretty confident that I can share the core or principle of the Sashiko I practice. So it would be great if you could consider taking the online class. I will be there for you to learn Sashiko comprehensively. So that's the learning Sashiko properly in my Sashiko. Does it make sense? It's not the Sashiko is not like a universal culture. It's like a pizza. I always use this analogy. It's like a pizza. There's no such a thing as right pizza or proper pizza. I mean, if I say that Chicago pizza is the pizza, some people might get offended. I mean, I went to Michigan for the college, so western side of Michigan, so Chicago was kind of closer, and I love that deep dish pizza. Like I kind of thought that American pizza is like that deep dish, in comparison to the pizza from Italy. So, but I just realized that it's not the universal pizza definition in the US. Same thing happens in Japan in Sashiko as well. So there's no such a thing as the right or proper Sashiko, and I don't know a place where you can learn it. But I do have the online class to share what I think it's the core of Sashiko. So there's not such a thing as like a right or wrong in Sashiko, which I keep saying. Like there's no such a thing as right or wrong, but there are, meaning there's stories behind the word. And there are many reasons why we call that and do something. Can we just, I'm sorry, just bothers me. Okay. There are a lot of, like, if I see the comments, I don't know what, no, I don't understand. I usually answer those questions, but there are few like, well, that means like I'm getting popular, which is like I don't know if I'm happy about it or not. But I see some. I have some troll. Do we call it trolls? Trolls? Is that a good English? Like is it proper English? I don't want to call her haters because I cannot believe how much time she spends on my account. It's very, time consuming to be hateful to somebody. So I don't want to call her hater, but there are some trolls that, well, I think she's bored. But I just wanted to block her there. But like, it happens. It happens. So if you reply to me, you don't know, I will do my best to clarify what I'm saying. But as long as it's not a hater, so if it doesn't make sense, please let me know. I will try another word. Yeah, she's probably, well, she's like the, how can I say? I think I banned her. Did I ban her? If I not ban her, that's perfectly fine too. But she's like a very superficial. Like she doesn't like my saying to be negative. I don't consider my saying as a negative, but she doesn't really. She wants Sashiko to be happy things to do. It is happy thing to do, but at the same time we have to. I want to express my understanding of cultural aspect or some stories behind it, like literally the stories behind it. It is perfectly fine for anybody to enjoy Sashiko as they wish, which I kind of don't know if she understands Sashiko because she keeps saying Shibori, which is completely different. I mean, Shibori and Sashiko is completely different. So I don't even know if she understands what Sashiko is, but she just doesn't like my negative comments or negative posts, which I don't consider negative. And I replied her that I'm not negative, and she was very upset, I guess. That's how I made a troll. It happens. It happens. It happens. Anyway, I don't want to take that much time on that. So if you do not understand what I'm saying, please say that I don't understand. Like if you could specify which part you don't understand, it's very appreciated. But has been 3 years since I started sharing Sashiko, and there we go. It was like that before, but it's getting more, I guess. So again, like as the conclusion, I am not gonna be offended. I'm not gonna be angry or sad by you calling you stitching Sashiko when you care about it. Otherwise, please call you stitching Sashiko. I mean, go ahead. So the reason I said like basting thread, I don't want to use the basting thread for Sashiko stitching, like basting thread like this thread. You know the basting thread, right? Like basting thread for the basting the fabric on the fabric. So basting thread is the thread to temporarily attach the fabric before actual stitching. So the purpose of basting thread is to be kind of fragile enough to be ripped off after the main purpose. That ruins the whole purpose of Sashiko. Do you get that? So the Sashiko's whole purpose, original purpose, is to make fabric stronger. So if the stitches are gonna be ripped off easily by a little bit of force, that ruins the whole purpose of doing Sashiko. That's why I don't think it's a good idea to use the basting thread on the Sashiko project. And that means like she does not or he does not, they don't understand the Sashiko if they use basting thread over the Sashiko thread. However, 40 years ago, people used the basting thread or thinner thread to do Sashiko by twisting several threads together. We don't do that anymore. We have another choice. They didn't have a choice. We have a choice to use Sashiko thread, so why not to use it? Thank you for the comments. I would like to know a little bit about Sashiko history. How were Sashiko families formed? Because if I understand correctly, it was something that common people practice at home. Yes, it is very true. There are no such a thing as Sashiko families per se, the reason I say that I'm from Sashiko family is that I'm from the family that made Sashiko more organized, more like a sort of business for that matter. My family tried to protect or continue Sashiko as the culture. In order to protect a thing as the culture, we have to think about the sustainable kind of circle we call economy. And otherwise, people really don't do hand stitching as the way to make a living, right? So my family is one of a few families in Japan who try to kind of revive the sashiko for that matter. So sashiko was an ordinary stitching that pretty much every household in a small village or poor family household practice every day for the survival. That's very true. Um, Besides those kogin or hishizashi, which is the upper north of Japan, the sashiko you're looking at right now actually extinct after World War II. They decided not to continue doing sashiko. I don't blame them. They became more wealthier. They could purchase the fabric instead of mend it. They didn't even have to make the fabric stronger. So they decided not to continue that. So I believe that there were millions of sashiko in Japan, but there are only few left because those are the sashiko some of the people try to revive. Same as my family's too. It's based on the kind of wisdoms left from the ancestors. Oops, just a second. Battery exhausted, just a second. So there's no such a thing as like a family for that matter. But there are groups or family who try to revive or to protect, to pass down the sashiko. Otherwise, the sashiko we see right now today is not. There we go. It's not here. So there are, as long as I know, there are like more than 10 sashiko with the name behind it. Nagai sashiko, Yuza sashiko, Genpo sashiko. There are a lot of sashiko with the name behind sashiko. Huh? Behind sashiko? Yes, something sashiko. So that means like usually it's a region's name. Regions and sashiko. Shonai sashiko is another reason. Another example. So if there's any name, that means that's the sashiko had practice in that region and then revived by those people. I'm not talking about kogin and hishizashi. It's different categories, so please don't mix them up. But speaking of the regular sashiko stitching, I think there is no sashiko which has been continuously, like, they once stopped practicing and they revived based on the grandmother's memo or grandmother's voice or history record pieces. So it's not something we formed to, like the other Japanese traditional culture, like kabuki or those traditional performing arts, they form a family to protect that. There are some families who try to do that in sashiko as well, but it's more like a community or guild that try to pass down those culture. I hope it makes sense. it's not that difficult. It's really simple. So anyone can do it if they are willing to learn. So there's no such a thing as like secretive. Well, there are some secretive stuff. That's what at least my family tried to protect. But in the society of internet, it's kind of impossible to protect a thing or culture by hiding it, because anybody can say anything about it. So I don't know if I like it or not. Hi. Hi. So for those who doesn't understand, who doesn't know this project from the last week live streaming, this is the pants that I made a damage, and I patched this one. I patched this much. I don't like this part, to be honest. I really don't like it. So I'm trying to kind of hide this part by stitching around. It's like a one ugly tree that I made. Not ugly, but not the tree that I like. So I'm making more trees to make a forest that it doesn't really show up. Well, I really don't pay attention to the result when I enjoy Sashiko per se. If I work for commission, yes, I do care, and it's not okay to say, well, I don't care about it. But when I just purely enjoy Sashiko stitching, I enjoy the movement instead of the result. So result is more like secondary. That's why this kind of things happens. Hello. Oh. Sounds like a plant. Yeah, I really don't have a... I'm not really good at the planning, for that matter. And I don't think the Japanese people planned that much when they were stitching a few hundred years ago. I always make a joke about it, but people worry about the stitching, perfect stitches, what is the best stitches for the Sashiko stitching, what is the best pattern, how can I make it beautiful. It is very natural to worry about it, but at the same time, it's come to think about the original scenery of Sashiko, I don't think they cared about the result that much when a child is freezing right next to her. So I have a 5 years old daughter. She has pretty much everything because she was born in the U.S. So we can get. She is not gonna suffer from not having the blanket. Well, she does. I should not be doing Sashiko stitching. I should get a job for that. But back in Japan, when Sashiko was practiced everywhere in Japan, they did Sashiko for the reason they couldn't have enough fabric to survive through the winter. And if the child is freezing, I don't know if they really cared about one stitch. So that's why I really don't want them to care about the result. I mean, it is very important to care about the result, but at the same time, I want them to be stuck or be extremely judgmental about it. It doesn't have to be that way. Do you have any deshi? That's a very good question. No, for that, I'm sorry. Like your fan page is very interesting. Can you talk about Dento and Densho? I will talk about it which I have to probably stop stitching, but I'll talk about it. How many times? How much time do I have? I will talk about it. Do I have any apprentice? So to answer the question, I don't. The reason is that apprentice is to kind of expand the culture, correct? So if I have a culture here, then I'm sorry, if I have a culture, is it? Stop. No. If I have a culture here, then if I want to expand it, or if I want to spread it, the culture, having the apprentice is a very good way to make a kind of tree, like ramification. The apprentice can have another apprentice to pass down those big tree. The Sashiko I received is kind of against that. They try to protect the Sashiko by limiting the amount of people who can receive it. So, and for that matter, I'm the one apprentice that they had, and I don't consider myself a teacher yet. Well, I teach, so I shouldn't say that, but I don't know if I am gonna be ready anytime soon to take apprentice, but I am receiving a lot of requests. So it's about my goal, my concept. It's kind of stupid, but I don't even know if I want to spread like that, to be honest. I just want to make sure that people do not repaint the culture that I received. So, and it's not that difficult. I mean, it's not that complicated to have an apprentice. Anybody can find their own Sashiko by just taking one Sashiko class. I mean, there are many people who actually did it already. So I don't know if there's any apprenticeship that I can make. It's more like understanding Japanese culture per se. Like, what is the Japanese courtesy? What is the Japanese mindset? That can be something they have to learn before actual stitching. So I don't know if I can get this stitching apprentice for that matter. But the answer is no. I don't have any apprentice for this shit. Whew, and Densho and Dento is very difficult concept to talk about, but since there's a request, I would like to talk about it. But I don't know if I can talk about it while stitching. So let me use some paper and pencil to discuss about it. I will stop stitching right now. Sorry if you come here for the stitching, but let me talk about Dento and Densho a little bit. I will probably have to make another video for explaining it super well, but I will talk about it. So there are two words. Allah. Just a second, I'll be right back. So we kind of, it's okay. We call it tradition. I think in English many people care about traditions, right? Like when I share Sashiko, many people ask me what is the traditional way, what is the traditional Sashiko, traditional. So I hope this makes sense. Just a second. Traditional. Naru. I hope this can. It might be a little bit difficult to watch on the YouTube. So in Japanese, this traditional can be divided by two words. One, then, to. By the way, this is my understanding. This is not from the dictionary. This is my understanding of Japanese word. So it can be wrong. So don't really take it to the your Japanese professor or something. I do not have a degree, so I don't really. This is my understanding. Then ah, sorry. Then show. So this is dento and then show. In general, when we translate the word traditional, many people use this dento. This is the traditional craft, is dento 的工芸品とか But in my definition, this dento is something new based on the tradition. This can be renovative. This can be something, it can be renovative. And this densho is tell or even pass down as is without changing it. So in today's society, many traditions is supposed to change or alter its form to survive through this new world. So many people try to change the traditional craft to adapt to today's society. That's the dento. However, my work, my role, I think my mission is to stick with this densho, to talk about the as is instead of trying to change it to adapt to this new world. So the traditional can be a very two meaning, and what I do is more like this, to pass down the as is, and your job, the people who watch this live streaming, or people who learn from me, or people who stitch Sashiko, with respecting this traditional densho, is the people who make another tradition which is called dento. So this renovative idea is, I hopefully this renovative idea should be based on this fact. Sometimes people ignore the link between the densho and the new idea. This is something I kind of warn that it can be a cultural repainting, or it can be a cultural appropriation. Or I am pretty much the core message I'm saying that is, please do not ignore it. Please pay attention. Please be caring for the as is, tradition as is, to make tradition for today. That's another reason I said that I am the past, you're the future. Ha! It's a very... I have to really write down more, but this is the kind of similar, a very quick version of the two words densho and dento. I hope it makes sense. If don't, wait for another video. Again, like, you know, this is a very silly excuse, but let me say that as excuse. You know, English is my second language. Talking without script is very difficult. Even my 5 years old daughter correct my English. Daddy, it's work, not work. I don't see the difference. I mean, I cannot. I'm trying to say work, not a work. So, yep, I'm probably more like I'm trying to pass down the as is. That's why kind of my stitching can be boring, because it's very monotone. It's not something creative. It's not something new. I try to do the Sashiko stitching, which probably of not the Japanese people were doing a few hundred years ago. Maybe different needle, maybe different thread, but imagining it's the same way to do that. Okay, it has been 45 minutes so far. I would like to probably stop in 10 minutes or so. If you have any questions, please let me know. I may be able to answer today, or I can carry on to the next live stitching. Since I probably can do the live streaming every Friday, so I will carry on that if that's the possible thing. Language is very interesting. Like one word, even English, like the English and Japanese are very different. But every language, each word has several meanings, right? So the word tradition has many meanings. That same go to the Japanese as well. So ideally speaking, ideally, in order to understand this Japanese sashiko fully, ideally it is critical to understand the Japanese as a language and read what the Japanese people have written. However, it is too much to ask to learn one language for one specific craft. Therefore, I try to translate as much as possible, but just a translation without understanding the culture is probably also insufficient for that. So, if you learn in Japan and if you know the Japanese language, you will probably come to the conclusion that wabi sabi is not about the beauty in imperfectionism. It's not about that. It is the beauty in imperfectionism is a part of wabi sabi, but it is not equal to wabi sabi. So that's another kind of reason that I have to keep sharing instead of defining. So it's not my job to define what Sashiko is. It is my job is to share what the Sashiko is so we can define together. It's easy to define what Sashiko is, just stitching, hand stitching, but it's really my definition will carry on my preferences, and I don't want to be exclusive to the other Sashiko stitching that I really don't know. So it's my intention to share and then we can define later. We don't even have to define if we don't have to. Sorry, it doesn't. Ah! Wait, so we have how many more minutes left? 5 more minutes. You know what? Let's share this. Instead of if I start stitching right now, then it's gonna be little time consuming. So I will share that. So it's really dirty pants, but oh, there we go. So I will add the. It's gonna. You may say again. Yes, it is again the same pattern as Asanoha patterns. Since I didn't like this rough stitches, big stitches, but this is something I cannot fix because there's too thick layer of denim and then cotton cargo pants. So this is probably the smallest stitches I can make with considering these two patches. So there's nothing I can do for that. So I will do the more beautiful or more tight, not tight, more neat Asanoha patterns here. I will add inside later, and here, and then this side as well. So this place will not be as my intention is to kind of hide this place by creating pattern outside, but it may be going the wrong way by creating the neat pattern and then making the battery exhausted again. Oopsie, this is the second battery. Might be, in comparison, it might not be as good as before. Wait. Sorry, I'll be right back. Yokosho. Hi, do you stitch on the left side of the fabric or right side? The left or right? Sorry, I don't understand the left or right. If it's back or front, it's back side. Have I ever tried the baby lock Sashiko sewing machine? Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I have not tried the recent one. It was like 10 years ago. Can be more than 10 years ago. Back then the baby Sashiko sewing machine was not fast enough for me to use. So it was more easier for me to stitch. It was more faster for me. But people tell me that the latest Sashiko stitching machine is quite fast, and there's no mess on the back side of the fabric. So I don't want it because the reason I enjoy Sashiko is the process of this smoothing hand stitching. So it's not about result, and I think the sewing machine is more like toward the result. So I prefer enjoying it. I don't plan to purchase the Sashiko sewing machine. And at the same time, some people think that I hate those Sashiko machine because Sashiko is the hand stitching. I don't really hate it. I mean, it's okay. If the Sashiko, the word Sashiko is gonna be spread around, I hope they understand I hope they try to care about the history of what the Sashiko means to the Japanese people. But at the same time, as I am not like, you know. some people tell me that's really kind of them. Some people share their empathy to me that how fierce I could be. I am not really. It's great. It's great that people can enjoy Sashiko with the sewing machine. But the reason of my Sashiko workshop, this account, my video is to share the enjoyment of moving the needle, running stitch. So it's kind of not against. It's outside of the. It's kind of outside. Shanatova. It's the Shanatova. It's a Rosh Hashanah. I'm sorry, I cannot say that word. Rosh Hashanah. I gotta cut apples today. Did I have apples? Do I have apples? Yes. I probably. Yep, tonight we're gonna eat apple. Well, I'm married to the Jewish person, so it's a Jewish family with Japanese tradition. It's kind of interesting. All right, so that's today's live session. What do I do with all the loose end? Please watch the YouTube videos. I think I do have the why do I have. Oh no. Yes, I do have 2 videos or 2 articles either on my website or YouTube. One is the why do I leave the loop, and the second thing is the Sashiko stitching without the knots. That 2 article explains what to do with all the loose end. And thank you so much. Apples and honey. That's what we're gonna have. Yep, apple and honey. So apple is very important. I have to have it today. I believe I have it. All right. So have a good weekend. For those who celebrate Rosh Hashanah, Shana Tova to you, to your family. And I'll see you next week. All right, have a good weekend. Bye bye. Thank you so much on the YouTube as well. I will come back next week about the same time. If you have any questions, please leave the comments so I will be able to answer that next time I am on the internet on the live streaming, which is the next Friday. I plan to. All right, so have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.